22 points. That is what Ferrari took out of a weekend where they arrived as favorites, with the fastest car in the technical corners and where both drivers were expected on the podium. 22, and neither of them got there. And when it was over, the man who runs that team was asked why he had not intervened to protect the driver who is second in the World Championship. His answer was one word long, and it was not about strategy. Here is what happened, told Flat, the Hungarian Grand Prix, the 26th of July, the last race before the summer shutdown. Leclerc started second. He dropped to fifth by the exit of turn 1, with too much wheel spin off the line, which put both Ferraris behind Piastri and behind Verstappen. Hamilton had already been demoted to fifth on the grid by a 3-place penalty for impeding Piastri in qualifying. Both cars started on the soft tire, the only frontrunners to do so. Hamilton pitted on lap 13 and initially came out ahead of Verstappen on the undercut. Leclerc followed 3 laps later. Then on lap 56, Piastri retired, a virtual safety car came out, and Ferrari brought both cars in together in a double stack. Hamilton lost track position for the final time. He then took a 5-second penalty for exceeding the pit lane speed limit and was classified 5th. Leclerc finished 4th, 1 point between them. Antonelli finished on the podium and stretched his championship lead over Hamilton from 45 to 50. Tell me where you are watching from in the comments, because that list keeps growing in directions I did not expect and I read all of it. Subscribe while you are there, because Monza is where this exact question comes back. Now, the man who made the call and why his record makes it worth taking seriously. Fred Vasseur ran Assart, ran Renault, ran Sauber. He has personally signed drivers who went on to become world champions. He has been in charge at Maranello since the start of 2023, and his entire public method is refusing to make decisions on emotion. He does not do race-by-race whiplash. He is, by reputation, the least reactive team principal on this grid. And what he said after Hungary was that intervening would not have been fair to Leclerc, who had driven a clean race while Hamilton had been penalized. Fair. That is the word he chose, and everything in this video hangs off it. Let me put the official logic under the light, one question at a time. Question 1. Did Vasseur deny that mistakes were made? Not at all. He said the race did not go well, with too many issues and mistakes, and that the first of those had been made on Saturday in qualifying. To another outlet, he was blunter still, saying they threw away good results because they made the wrong decisions. Question 2. Whose decisions? His pit walls. He named the qualifying warning that came too late. He acknowledged the team was caught out by Verstappen, running 29 laps on the soft tire, and admitted afterwards that the softs were lasting roughly twice as long as anybody at Ferrari expected. Question 3. Was the double stack under the virtual safety car defensible? Analysis of the telemetry published by Planet F1 called it baffling, pointing out Hamilton was on hard tires and could comfortably have run to the end on them, while Verstappen behind him was on softs. Question 4. So if the pit wall made the errors, why did the driver carry the cost? Because of where Vasseur drew the boundary of that word. He counted the penalties as Hamilton's and the strategy as the team's, and then measured fairness only against the first list. Question 5, the one that never gets asked. Fair according to what? Because fairness inside a team is not a fixed thing. It is a policy, and somebody chooses it. Now hold that thought, because Ferrari have already answered that exact question about this exact driver, and the answer is on the record. Go back to 2019, Leclerc's first season in red. Ferrari issued team orders to him twice that year. In Austria, he was told to hold position. In China, he was told to yield position to Sebastian Vettel. Same team, same driver, told to move over 7 years ago, in a season where Ferrari were not even leading a championship. And go further back, and it is not an exception, it is the house style. When Michael Schumacher joined in 1996, it was clear from day one that he was the driver the team was built around, alongside Eddie Irvine, then Rubens Barrichello, then Felipe Massa. Ferrari did not invent the team order, but for 2 decades they were the team most associated with it. Set the two decisions side by side and be careful, because both hold up on their own terms. 2019, a young driver, no title on the line, told to yield in service of a hierarchy. That is defensible because a team is entitled to organize itself. 2026, a 7-time world champion, second in the championship, and the team declines to intervene because the other driver had a cleaner afternoon. That is also defensible because rewarding execution is a principle, and principles cost something. or they are not principles. What you cannot say is that both come from the same philosophy. Something changed at Ferrari between those 2 Sundays, and it is not the car. Then the timeline moves, and here is the part that makes this a story rather than a debate. Vasseur did not make this call quietly and get left alone. Within days, 3 separate figures with serious standing had publicly said Ferrari should have helped Hamilton. Jolyon Palmer, a former Formula One driver, described Leclerc as potentially a great asset in a title fight. Jacques Villeneuve, the 1997 world champion, backed the same position, and Rob Smedley, who worked as a race engineer inside Ferrari, said the same. Juan Pablo Montoya went further and argued Leclerc should have been asked to slow and protect Hamilton's position in the closing stages. A former champion, a former Ferrari engineer, and 2 former drivers, all pointing the same way. And the team principal went the other way anyway. So if you were Vasseur in that room, you had 2 moves and both cost real money. Order Leclerc to hold station, and you have told your other driver who has just signed a long contract and had a clean race that his afternoon is a resource now. Do it once, and you cannot undo it for the rest of the season or the rest of his time at the team. Or refuse, keep the garage even, and hand 5 points to a 19-year-old who is running away with a championship you are supposed to be fighting for. Which one do you take? Like this video if you make the call, comment if you keep it even, and I will read the split next time. Subscribe while you are down there. Now what the principal cost, in the only currency that settles anything. The gap between 4th and 5th in Hungary was 1 point. That is what a direct order would have moved on the day. Set against that, a precedent that lasts the rest of the season and beyond. But the real number is not 1, it is 22. 22 points from a weekend that Ferrari went into as favorites, on a circuit that suited them, with a car that was fastest through the technical sections. Compare that with a maximum haul, and the shape of the loss is obvious, and Hamilton went into the break 50 points behind Antonelli with a maximum of 316 still available. 50 is not a wall. 50 is roughly 2 race wins, but it is 50 in a season where the leader has never fallen off and where Hamilton has now collected 4 penalties across 3 race weekends, which is exactly why the outside voices called for the order. Not because 1 point matters, but because a team that will not act on 1 point today is unlikely to act on 25 points in October. Hamilton, for his part, did not ask for the help. He said afterwards that recent mistakes on his side are making his championship challenge harder. That is a driver taking his share, and it is the strongest thing anybody said all weekend. There is a structural reason Vasseur cannot simply do what the pundits wanted, and almost nobody explains it properly. A team order is not a radio message. It is a permanent change in the relationship between a driver and his employer. Ask a driver to yield once, and every subsequent instruction he receives gets read through that decision. Every strategy call that goes against him becomes suspicious. Every upgrade that arrives on the other car first becomes evidence. And it is easy to promise that a favor will be returned later in the season, and very hard to deliver that promise when the driver being asked is in the middle of a race chasing his own objectives. That is why teams delay this call as long as they possibly can, not out of sentiment. Because the day you make it, you have spent something you cannot get back, and you have spent it on whatever points happen to be available that afternoon. Now, the strongest case against everything I have just said. Vasseur may simply have done the arithmetic correctly. Antonelli has been on the podium relentlessly, and Mercedes have had at least 1 car up there at every race this season. If the realistic path to the driver's title is already thin, then sacrificing Leclerc's afternoon buys almost nothing and costs a precedent that lasts years. Leclerc, on that Sunday, had driven a clean race. Hamilton had impeded another driver in qualifying and then exceeded the pit lane limit. Rewarding the cleaner drive is not favoritism. It is the only rule that does not require anybody to be told they matter less. And Vasseur has been consistent about this all season, treating both drivers as equals and waiting for the championship picture to force his hand rather than forcing it himself. That is a serious argument, and I do not think it is wrong. So here is where I land, and I want to be exact about it. I am not going to tell you which driver deserved that place. This channel does not take sides between 2 drivers, and Leclerc did nothing on that Sunday except drive a clean race, which is what he is paid for. What I can put in front of you is the shape of the decision. A team principal named fairness as his reason, and the fairness he measured covered his driver's penalties and not his pit wall strategy. He said himself that the wrong decisions were made and that good results were thrown away. Those decisions were not made by Lewis Hamilton. And this is a team that has issued this exact order to this exact driver before, in a year with far less at stake. None of that means Vasseur was wrong, and none of it suggests anyone is being favored. A boss is entitled to decide that a precedent costs more than a point. But when the reason given is fairness, the question of whose mistakes get counted inside that word is a legitimate one, and Ferrari's own history is the reason it can be asked at all. And 22 is what survives all of it. 22 points from a weekend Ferrari should have won, with a team principal who admitted the wrong calls were made and then declined to spend anything correcting them, because the driver who paid was the one who had also been penalized. He chose the principal. He is allowed to. Monza will tell you what it cost. Zandvoort is next, then Monza on the 4th to the 6th of September, where Ferrari's second engine upgrade arrives and where both cars should be fast, at the same time on the same circuit. If Hamilton and Leclerc end up split by one place again in Italy, Vasseur gets asked this question a second time, in front of the Tifosi, and the word fair will be waiting for him. So predict it now. Does he give the order at Monza, or does he hold the line again? Say it below, subscribe so you are here when we check that against what he actually does, and hit like if you want that breakdown the day it happens. Until the next one.